You're listening to the Our Erie podcast with DaVona Pacley,
Marty Nwachukwu,
and Lydia Laythe.
We're here to highlight community voices and bring new perspectives to the table.
We are unpacking Erie's and America's baggage.
We're speaking truth to power.
Take a seat.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. We're back this week for a fun topic, an interesting topic, a maybe slightly controversial or uncomfortable or courageous topic. We're going to be talking about death and dying and what a death cafe is. So we're really excited to have our guest here this week is Barb Newcamp. She actually runs death cafes, and she's going to tell us a little bit about how she got involved in this kind of field of work and what she's doing. So Barb, I'd love to give the floor to you to get started by just telling us a little bit about how you got started in this sort of topic and then this work that you do.
Well, I was sitting in a dentist office reading People magazine. Isn't that what everybody does? And I saw this article about this couple that started a green burial cemetery in South Carolina, the Ramsey Park, I think it's called, or Ramsey Creek is what's called. 1998, I think they started it. And they talked about, how the process is and that it's not, it's natural, just go in the ground in a biodegradable coffin. And I thought, this makes so much sense. It's like one of those light bulb moments, So I started getting involved in it by reading. I'm a researcher, so I started reading a lot about it. And my daughter was living in Harrisburg at the time, and I had heard about a workshop, and I knew not really anything about it other than what I read in the books, but I didn't have any hands-on. And what they did was actually have a model. Somebody was the dead person, and they showed how you would prepare someone if you were having a home funeral. And so that was quite enlightening, and so I had all these books, and I was, reading them. And then I had 4 kids, and I was busy, and I was working. And I thought, well, I put them in this really nice case in my back of my closet and said, I'll get back to that sometime. And my friend came up to me and said, I heard that you're interested in green burial. Isn't that weird how connections happen? And I said, yeah, I am. And I went up to my closet, took that satchel out of my closet and handed it to her and said, here, this is all I know about it. So we ended up collaborating and had a workshop called When I Die, I Want to Be a Tree. And we had a 2-part workshop, and that was really good for organizing our thoughts. And that's kind of where I got started. And so then I have been pursuing it from that point on,
And how do people react when you talk to them about death and dying and kind of the things that you seem, very passionate about? How do people respond to you, and how do you kind of engage people in these discussions?
Oh, I think people, they know me now well enough that that's one of my topics. And most people are interested. They're interested. They're not, when I talk, especially about green burial, so many people just don't know about it. They don't know about it. And so once I tell them about it and the repercussions that are happening with our traditional burials and cremations, then they're like, wow, that's really interesting. Not that they're going to move to the next spot, but they're aware of it now, and they are interested in it. And as far as talking about death, that's really been an interesting thing because the people that come, it's really been a really wonderful experience to watch people discuss things that they have been thinking about, because I have this quote here, world death rate holding steady at 100%. And we all are going to die, but yet in our Western culture, we do not want to talk about it. Like it's never going to happen. And so we then go to the end, and then abruptly we die, and people, and everybody's left with a massive amount of emotions going everywhere, and we're not prepared. I just had a friend pass last week, and no preparation whatsoever. And so that just leaves everybody kind of hanging, And so I really am emphasizing, and it was hard for me to do it myself because it takes time and it takes thought. And you really have to just do it. It's like anything else that requires paperwork and thought that you put off. You generally think, I have lots of time. I don't need to do this right now. But lots of time could be what? Tomorrow? For anybody, or we don't know what's going to happen to us. So the earlier you could do it, the better. And of course, you can update it as you go on. So it's not just for old people, although those are the people that should have it, older people, I should say. But it's also for young people to focus on, okay, if something should happen, if I should have an accident or if something should happen, and I want to be able to at least tell how I feel and what I would like,
Yeah. It makes me wonder, maybe just a kind of aside, just to bring everyone else into the conversation. Like, when was the last time you all talked about death or dying, or like, have you ever talked about like your plans for if you die?
That's actually funny, because I was just going to say that in the last year, as a birth doula. It's funny because we were talking about this before we started to record, and I'm on the other end of the spectrum as a birth doula, assisting birthing people to bring in a child into the world. And so now, doing that job, I found that there are people who do death doulaship, and it really just had me thinking about my own mortality. I also think when people pass away, and I hear about it, it also makes me then think about my life.
Yes.
So in the last year, I will say I have actually become more comfortable talking about when I pass, or if I pass, what would I want, or how do I want things to be? Just because, like Barb said, you never know. Like, what I'm saying? In my head, I'm thinking, oh yeah, when I get old, right? And hopefully that would be the case.
Yeah, that's older, the case. Yeah.
And I'm 90 or 100. But at the end of the day, to have these healthy conversations of when it happens, or if it happens, how do I want to be? What space do I want to be with family? Like, I do think about that.
Yeah.
And I have not been uncomfortable, which is interesting. And maybe because of the work that I'm doing now. But I think, I don't feel uncomfortable talking about it anymore. It's still scary to think about your own death, but I don't feel uncomfortable.
I don't feel uncomfortable talking about death, but like within the past year, especially when COVID first started, I thought about it a lot and was very, very scared about, not seeing my life fully realized. But even within that, in the last few months here, I got life insurance because I'm like, okay, I have student debt. I had a car loan that I've recently paid off, but like, if something were to happen to me, I don't want my family to have to worry about my debts and also have the money to like bury me. I haven't made a living will yet. I know in your 20s, you're supposed to start thinking about that, and that's something I'll approach soon. But yeah, I've been starting to think about and prepare, and like also keeping my space neat. And like, I have a friend who talks about people don't think about when they pass how their family members have to go through all their stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Clutter
Yes.
is something they have to deal with. So I'm always mindful of like making sure my space is not too much.
That's interesting. Yes.
That's really interesting. What about you, Lydia?
Oh gosh. I don't know actually, maybe this was, so I should also mention that I painted a picture. Maybe I'll turn my camera around later, but I have a picture of like a skeleton that I painted doing like a yoga pose.
Nice.
In my room. So I look at that all the time, which not that like necessarily the skeleton inherently makes me think about death and dying, but that's always there. But then I actually just the other day, so my dad passed away like 5 years ago or so. And the other day, out of the blue, I don't know what made me think, but I have my big winter coat, and I have like a little like top zipper pocket, and I felt something in it. And so I opened it up, and it was like a thick stack of my dad's like palm card that you like give away at the memorial service. It's like, It had his picture, and a quote of his, and like this pretty nature scene on the back or whatever. But I had a thick stack of them in my pocket. I was like, I don't remember when I put those in my pocket, why I have like a bunch of them. Like, did I get those from my mom's house later? Like, I don't remember why, but then I was like, oh wow, like that's so interesting. And my dad was sick with cancer for a long time. So he was given, for better or worse, because he was battling cancer, but he also was given a lot of time to think about his dying wishes. Like, so he made he wanted to be cremated and he wanted to be his ashes scattered in like all these different places. And so he made a list of all these places he wanted and all the music he wanted at his funeral and all these different things. So he was really able to curate, like, this is what I want the memorial to look like. And he was able to like, record videos and video, you know, silly stuff and life advice and all these different things. He prepared like birthday cards for me up until my like 26th or 27th birthday. Like, so he was able to do some of those things that in the busyness of our lives, we just don't think about preparing. And so, yeah, I think, you know, as sad as it is to lose someone, that like you said, DaVona, like gives you more insight into like the importance of preparing or thinking through these things and what you leave behind. So
absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Barb? I'm sure you talk about this quite often, but when was the last time or in what context were you thinking about death and
like you said, when friends pass, you know, when friends die, I kind of not say pass, I just say die because that's what they do. We kind of sugarcoat that a little bit. And a friend died just Friday, and I definitely, and then as you get older, obviously you're thinking of, and I did have a bout of breast cancer. So that even put me really close to the line. And so all those things together, your mortality is much more vivid at my age. And because I am going to start losing friends in the next 10, 20 years, you know, and with that goes memories and love and your own mortality, you know, but so that's kind of, you know, one of the things that gets me moving to promote talking about it and also getting some plan. Now, to go back to your advanced directives, there's a whole bunch of them online. You can get them online. You can do anything. There's some that you can put your stuff online, some of them that you do it on paper. You find someone that is going to be your health advocate. And so that could be, I mean, I have 4 children, and I know that all 4 children, there's of all my 4 children, some of them would be worthless. I have a daughter that just will fall apart when I go. She's emotionally very vulnerable, excitable. And so I wouldn't choose her because she wouldn't be able to make good decisions for me. And and then geographically, you want to get someone fairly close, probably not someone if at my age, close to my age, because they might not be there either. So it's a big decision who you ask to be your health advocate. It has to be someone that's realistic and that is forceful, but not aggressive, you know, and the honest opinion. I've been reading a lot about that. This Irish doctor, he said, you know, we might change our mind at the end. I mean, we think we know exactly how we're going to feel, and we know exactly what we want, and we know exactly what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden you're at the brink of death and you're like, oh no, I want everything. Keep me alive at any price, any methodology, you keep me alive. And all of a sudden everyone's looking at each other like, wait a minute. But this is also the advanced directives are for when you can't advocate for yourself. When you either for dementia or an illness or an accident or something that you can't give your own opinion, then you want someone to be able to say no. I listened to this gentleman, this doctor on the NPR once, and he said, there's nothing more stressful than watching a group of siblings outside their mother's door arguing about what she would want. And that's true. And that's the stress that you put your family through, like you said about the having to clean out someone's house, you know, when they didn't make plans for it. That is really not, it's just not nice.
No. Right. No. That's interesting. That's interesting. Sorry, I think somebody's getting ready to say something.
No, I was just going to say that it's almost like in our efforts to not make people feel uncomfortable by talking about our eventual death, we actually end up creating more issues in the aftermath. It's like, I mean, like that's almost like textbook avoidance, right? Like by avoiding the issue, you create secondary and tertiary problems as a result. But yeah, I just had never thought about it in that way. That's just.
And maybe at the end, we'll talk a little bit about games and things that you can inspire you to do some talking.
Yeah.
Love that.
If you want.
Yeah.
So
for sure. So you had mentioned green burials and some of the problems with our traditional ways of
right. I have been promoting green burials. I have gone to several cemeteries, because there's such a thing as hybrid. I don't want to start a green burial. It's just a lot of work. I mean, you have to have a board, you have to have treasurer, you have to put so much money up to have a green, to like $25,000 or some enormous, or you have to be a nonprofit or associated with religion to start one. And at this point in my life, I don't want to start a cemetery, but you can get involved with one that's already established and make a hybrid. And there's a lot of, I'm trying to think how many, there's probably 160 natural burial grounds and in the United States. And I think Pennsylvania might have 10 hybrids where cemeteries leave a section of their cemetery for green burials. So therefore you just kind of fit in. You don't have to start all over again and start from scratch, which is really nice. And that allows a choice for people to have. And so I'm working on that. And I've come up a little bit against frequent walls because people, again, are not educated about green burial. They're nervous about it. They don't think, even though our cremations are way surpassed traditional burials and are, and there's a nice option for an alternative, because if you think about it, our only option is traditional or cremation right now. And of all the choices we have for everything in the world, I mean, I was just at the grocery store today and saw 5,500 cereal boxes. Right. And I'm thinking, and here I am, I have two choices. I can get cremated or I can get traditionally buried. Right. And so let me give you some statistics about traditional burials. There is in the United States every year this is, we probably have enough, this is all that goes into traditional burials and cremation. We have used enough steel to make the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay, that's a pretty big amount of steel. These are all non-renewable things. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. We use wood enough to build 1,800 homes, the wood that we have for caskets. Formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen, we could fill 8 Olympic-sized pools. Oh okay, that if you can, I like to have visuals, Yeah. And then the cement you have is probably you could make a 2-lane highway from Detroit to New York, about 500 miles. And so that's all non-renewable stuff we're putting in the ground. Okay. And so cremations, although they are less ecologically invasive, they have to have a 14 to 1,800 BTU in order to get to the heat, which natural is gas. Mm-hmm. And then also they leave off a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, many, many places have newer crematories, so they probably have a better system of filtering. But overall, we think that everybody thinks, cremations are just environmentally, safe. And then during my research a little bit, because I thought, well, you just spread ashes, it's like a good thing. And I find out that they're very high in sodium and pH. So actually, if you plant them at the base of a tree, they turn into like this hard rock entity. And so it just kind of goes on and on and on. So green burial it's like the least invasive. And a green burial consists of, you go 3 to 4 feet into the ground. You use a biodegradable coffin. You could make it, or a shroud. You could just be put into the ground, wrapped in a shroud or a blanket. You don't get embalmed, and call it a day. And they generally don't have headstones. It's usually a natural bush, tree, or a stone to mark where you are. So that's what you do. It's as easy as that. And it's so less intrusive to our environment. And we have to start thinking of that, because our environment is in perils right now. And if we don't change many of the things that our practice is, and this is a $22 billion industry, is funeral homes. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we like tradition, especially when it makes such good money. Right. And so I'm really coming up against a wall when I talk to people in the business, trying to get a hybrid going in our area. And so I'm still working on it. I'm not going to let it go until I get one. And I hope I get one before I go, but I'm sure I will, because I'm so that's kind of a little bit of the statistics on there, and they're pretty eye-opening, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did not realize a green burial was that. It's before I knew. Okay, so let me backtrack. I wanted a green burial and I want a green burial, but I did not know that that was the name and the term for it. But I always wanted to be buried in a tree or within a tree. And, you know, because I just felt like it was like giving back to the earth and like kind of the cycle then continues.
Right,
you know?
right.
So,
why not?
yeah. And so to hear that that's actually a term when I had wanted that, and I've always had that vision of that's how I was going to be buried. It's interesting now that that term, thank you for putting a term to what I wanted.
And if you go to Green Burial Council, they have so much information. I mean, you could get more information. It's a Green Burial Council, and it has phenomenal amounts of information on green burial. So my goal is to get some green burial hybrids going, so we have choices, because I think we need choices. And I think there's 10,000 people. This is an amazing statistic. Will be turning 65 in the next 19 years. So by 2030, all the baby boomers will be 65. Now, you can't tell me there's a market there, not a market there. When you get everybody over 65, 10,000 people, I mean, a lot of them are from the era of Earth Day and, ecologically minded. And it's all about education, I think. People just don't know. And that's my friend. So my friend who did the workshops with me, going back a little bit, Sue Malik, we gave ourselves a name because we thought we had to, and made cards, and it was called Guides to the Other Side. And that's kind of where we are right now. We have this little coalition, her and I, and some fall, and that's kind of what we go by. And so she and I are working hard to get people to open up about it and educating people, because I think it's only education that is holding a lot of us back.
I'm curious, in your research, have you come across like whether historically we were closer to green burials, or like how long we've been doing our traditional burials versus like globally, what does like burials look for different plate people?
Well, for us in the United States, it's a little over 100 years ago, we were taking care of our own. We were, we had a parlor, funeral parlor, a parlor, and that's where the person would sit, be laid out, and neighborhood and family would stay with that person. Then they get buried either in the back 40 or in the churchyard. So all this changed with the Civil War, when we started to embalm. Was discovered, and we embalmed the soldiers that were fighting in the Civil War so they could go back home. And Lincoln actually was embalmed, and he took that big ride all over this country, and he was embalmed. And so it started to become prestigious, to embalm. And then and it started moving out of the homes. It went to carpenters were first the ones that did were funeral directors, because they built the coffins, and then it moved on to an industry. But so it's not been that long. 100 years is a long time, but it hasn't been that long that we have moved away. And have we moved away from our food sources? Have we moved away from our medical procedures? Have we moved away from many things that is easier? When my mother-in-law died, she died in a nursing home. They whisked her away. And next time we saw her, was looking natural. And if you ever read how they make people look natural as far as the embalming process, you'll never go to a funeral and look at it the same. And next thing you know, we were in the cemetery. She was being put into the ground, and we walked away. And it was just like, wait a minute, all this happened, and I didn't have a connection to it at all, And that's a whole nother topic, home funerals. But that's kind of where I'm going, as far as I had 4 home births. So I figured I might as well have a home funeral. Yeah. But so anyway, we're just disconnected with so much of our sources, and I just think green burial, it allows people to be more involved if you've ever, and, be a part of it. And generally you'll be able there to care for the body before it gets buried, have time to say goodbye, have time to be with the body, to be with that person, instead of them being whisked away and you just are left with your grief,
Yeah. I have a personal story on that one, but yeah. I just feel like that's how my experience I will just share. That's how my experience was with my, my grandfather, my mom's father. He wanted to be cremated and was cremated, but my paternal side, my grandfather was, it was pretty quick. And as far as like what you just said, like I didn't even get to see the body. I saw it at the funeral, but then close the casket, and then you go to the cemetery. And I was telling them before we got on the show, I was like, I've been to the cemetery for the first time and actually experienced it, where I like walked around and laid on the grass near my grandfather's grave, because I was having I really wanted to connect with my grandfather. And I really, in that way of like going back to the space that the first time we buried him, I rode in the car up to the site.
Yeah.
And, you know, the whole stuff was up and whatnot. And it just didn't feel like I was not able to connect. And I was like, okay, this is it. And then I never wanted to go to the cemetery until during COVID. I was like, I really want to visit the cemetery. And so that's when I was able to, and literally I felt like my grandfather was leading me, because that cemetery is hard to like find. I don't know if everybody's ever tried to find a coffin or a space there. It's hard. Like
which one is this?
This is at the Erie Cemetery on West 21st or West 20th, I believe, over here.
Is that 26 between?
Is that West 26? Yes.
Yeah, I walked there. My friend just introduced me to that. They have the most beautiful trees there.
The most beautiful trees. It's honestly, I was really having a rough day, and I was like, you know, I really want to go see, you know, and I need to go and just kind of like take in the space. I'm telling you, I feel like my grandfather was like, my stone is here, because I did not know where I was going.
Wow.
But I was like, please lead me, because I don't really know where I'm going. Literally, I turn around and there's this stone. It was crazy. It was a crazy experience. But I laid on the ground and I was like, wow, like I'm so here, you know, and these little periwinkle, flowers were by the tombstone, and just the trees. It was a beautiful warm day, and just the trees were so nice. And so, yeah, it's a great place to like release anxiety and stress. Like,
that's a beautiful spot.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful spot. Like it doesn't feel weird for me. I know for some it does, and some it will trigger some, but I think that we all should at least try once to go walk around the cemetery. And the Erie Cemetery is decent.
Yeah, the ones in Edinburgh are beautiful. You know, they're right on Lakeside. There's one that's like right on the lake.
Yes.
And it's so beautiful to go there. And I've gone there a few times. I think one time for like Easter, my mom and I like got Tim Hortons donuts or something, and then went out and sat in the cemetery for a couple hours.
Funerals, cemeteries used to be just a Sunday place to go before we had parks. They would go and have picnics and different horse races, and people just would go to the cemeteries. That was their park until they established parks around cities, you know, but that was the park that people went to. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just really quick, I want to say that things are changing. I mean, green burial is coming to be. It's going to be. It's just a matter of who's going to catch onto the train, you know? Yeah. And but there are some options. I just watched a movie about being buried artificial reefs. There's some people that they put the ashes in these made up these cement reefs to put them into the ocean and to promote coral reef regeneration. And there's also a water system that you can go. They do something with water. And but the one that I really, really am interested in is Recompose. And this is a woman in Washington State, and I've been following her since she started. Her name is, what is her name? Caitlin Spade. And she has a 12-minute TED Talk that's so interesting. But anyway, she started developing this Recompose machine, and it actually was passed legislatively in Washington just last year. And now she's recomposing people, which means she puts them in this tube and puts wood ash and some alfalfa and some other stuff on them. In 30 days, they come out 1 cubic yard of soil. And it takes 1/8 of the energy of a cremation. 1/8. That's amazing. And you get a cubic yard of soil. Now, in my mind, I'm not mathematic. I was like, what the heck is a cubic yard? So I started looking into it. Well, in my mind, it's 54 bags of 40-pound bags of soil. Wow. You can do it easier if you have a mathematical mind, but it's kind of a truckload of soil because they put a lot of wood ashes on there. And you can either take the soil and make a garden, or they have a forestry, they're connected with some forestry that they're doing a project, and they take the soil there. But she has visions of having parks around the city, and they would let you know where your loved one's soil is. So you could have a picnic in the park and know that Aunt Mimi is in this area.
Wow.
So that's really exciting. And she just started it last year. I was in Washington visiting my daughter and I wanted to go see it so bad, but it was like 5 hours away. But anyway, so things are changing. They're getting more options, but it's slow. It's very slow, but we don't have time environmentally.
Right.
You've been listening to the Our Erie podcast.
Community voices unpacking Erie's baggage and speaking truth to power.
You can continue the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Our Erie Series.
Funding provided by United Way of Erie and Ember+Forge.
Music produced by Light Shadow.
We appreciate you for listening to the Our Erie podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.
Keep fighting the good fight.
Peace.